Another crucial meeting for President Trump today in his effort to put an end to the war in Ukraine. Later this afternoon, he will welcome Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, along with several leaders from the European Union, to try to hammer out an agreement to satisfy both Ukraine and Russia. Today's meeting comes in the wake of last Friday's sit-down with Russian President Putin in Alaska. And Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George joins us now live from the White House. Good morning, Joe. I guess a crucial day where you are for sure. What do we expect is ahead?
Well, I think we can't underscore enough just how rare what's about to unfold here at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue truly is. I mean, it isn't just Zelenskyy coming here. You're talking about the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the President of France, the leader, the Chancellor of Germany, the leaders of the EU and NATO, just days after this historic summit between President Trump and President Putin in Alaska. And while we have a light idea, given what Trump administration officials said on the Sunday Public Affairs show about what was discussed behind the scenes, we don't have the specific details of what Trump and Putin really talked about, what Putin may have agreed to President Trump to end the war. This is an opportunity for the Trump administration, for President Trump to present a playbook potentially for the end of this conflict to President Zelenskyy. And it will be up to President Zelenskyy to decide whether or not this is something that they can agree to, that he can agree to, or if something that is a red line and that we're very much back to the status quo. This has always been a war about land, and we can pull up the map of Ukraine. Remember, this war started because of land. It will likely end as a result of land. That red area there, the eastern portion, really, of Ukraine that borders Russia, Russia controlled, or at least partially, by the Russian army. Previously, President Zelenskyy has said that he'd be unwilling to give up any Ukrainian territory and allow President Putin to control some of it. But does that change at all after today's meeting? Is a Crimea maybe in play, which has been under Russian control for so many years now? Land, land, land. President Trump has certainly painted an optimistic picture going into today's historic event here at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He said over the weekend that great progress was made involving Russia. The president said this on Truth Social just after 9 p.m. Last night, previewing today's meeting at the White House. Quote, President Zelenskyy of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. Remember how it started. No getting back Obama-given Crimea 12 years ago without a shot being fired, and no going into NATO by Ukraine. Some things never change. So almost the president laying out what may be on the table here is that Crimea may go to Russia control officially, and that Ukraine would have to agree to never joining NATO. Security guarantees for Ukraine will no doubt be a part of the conversation as well. President Putin has previously objected to missiles and military equipment being so close to their borders, but President Zelenskyy isn't going to agree to something unless there's some backing of European leaders, maybe the United States, a long-term security force to try and keep the peace. And we cannot say this enough of what happened in February, right? The last time President Zelenskyy was here at the White House, a major dust-up occurred, a shouting match really between President Trump and Zelenskyy and Vice President Vance. It set back Ukrainian relations really several months. Now, the two men are in a much more amicable place today, but no doubt having so many European leaders essentially as backup will make Zelensky's resolve and position a bit stronger, again, as we prepare for this historic gathering of European leaders here at the White House. Holly, all of this set to get underway around the lunch hour later today, Holly.
And Joe, as far as the EU leaders coming, you know, a lot of people are saying, hey, listen, so that there is no repeat of what happened in the White House the last time President Zelenskyy was there. But others also wondering if it's because they are a little miffed they didn't have a seat at the table last Friday during the meeting along with Ukraine. So really, what is that signaling, the fact that these leaders are coming to the White House to stand side by side with President Zelenskyy?
Well, additionally, a number of these leaders, and I'm thinking of the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the President of France especially, they have relatively warm relations with President Trump. They've been able to make the president laugh, to woo him a bit, seem to have good chemistry when they've met with the president in recent months. So a friendly face being in the room that may be able to advocate a position of President Zelenskyy, that's a very, very powerful force. Yes, I think a lot's being made that, well, maybe this is meant so that what happened in February doesn't happen again. It's important to note that, again, much different place, at least publicly, these two men are in at least much better position today here in August of 25 than they were in February of 2025. But having the people who make the decisions, who have to sign off on the decisions, leaders of the EU are coming today. Leaders of NATO are here today. The Chancellor of Germany and the President of France, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, as we've mentioned, Italy's leader will be here as well. Having all of these folks in the room, they're able to be advisors as well, advise Zelenskyy on something, advocate a certain position, maybe say that this is a pretty good offer and that they should take it. I mean, this is all that is at stake here. I've heard this described by one European journalist this morning as really being kind of an impromptu G7. I mean, it's just so rare that we just have so many leaders gathering at one place. Yes, they see each other from time to time at G7s and grand summits that take months to plan. This was put together really in the last several days. Holly, I think an appropriate analogy is to use a multi-act play here. If Act 1 was Friday, Trump, Putin, Alaska summit, we had a weekend intermission. Act 2 is about to get underway here at the White House.
And one last question for you, Joe, before we let you go. Let's talk about NATO. Ukraine wanted to be a part of NATO, especially for what's known as Article 5, right? An attack on one is an attack on all. And that's a no-go for Putin. And now it sounds like perhaps President Trump's going to say, listen, we're going to give you guarantees. We will always protect you. But a guarantee is not, a contract. My verbal word is not valuable because President Trump may not, won't be in office after 3 years. So how important is that? Could that be a major sticking point, or is that something they can get around?
Well, maybe the agreement is not to formally join NATO, but does NATO have a permanent military presence somewhere in Ukraine, on the eastern portion of Ukraine, near whatever the border of Russia may end up being? That's certainly a possible part of this equation here. That's why NATO's here. That's why the EU's here. That's why the leaders of France and Great Britain are here as well. What may they be asked to do? Maybe President Trump is unwilling to do X, but maybe Great Britain, France, and Germany may be able to do Y. Does that help get everything to an agreement? And we talked about this multi-act analogy, right? Today's Act 2, Zelenskyy, Trump, European leaders. What will Act 3 bring? Does a summit between Putin and Zelenskyy happen as a direct result of what unfolds behind me at the White House later today? Is a peace accord possible? Again, the president is at least putting the ball in Ukraine's court ahead of this meeting. We'll see what President Zelenskyy ultimately is willing to agree to, or if his red line of not giving up any Ukrainian territory to Russia remains the same. Again, just a historic day, another historic, we've been saying that so often, Holly, it's almost become cliche, but this really is a historic day unfolding here at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We'll have continuing coverage throughout the morning and throughout the afternoon.
All right, we will check back in with you shortly. Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George for us at the White House. Thank you, Joe.